I think it's like you kind of want to be helpful in other regards. Like otherwise, it's just about promoting your app, and that's not really good. But showing a bit about how you think about things behind the scenes, or just trying to be helpful to other people.
The influence of a social media personality on a company, and they push a feature out, and then a social media, like, influencer or somebody of that nature goes, "Oh, look, here's something cool you could do on Android or on iOS or on your Tesla," right? Like, what do you feel is, like, that role in today's society to help evangelize the features that you released?
And I think it was good. Like first of all, to give feedback to the team, and it's like, oh, this is not working so well, but also to see what the potential is. And I think the potential is pretty high, in particular for the chat thing.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Summer of Atlassian. Today I have a special guest, and this is the third time that I speak with you. I'm gonna see if third time's a charm. I've learned after Team 24 that the J is more like a Y, right? So it's
That's right.
Jens Schumacher. If you say it fast enough,
Oh,
I can get the
we
S,
gotta
right?
we gotta work on that last name. My 5-year-old does a better job now.
Oh man. I thought I was really hoping that by the third time I can finally not
try
butcher your
try
name.
Schumacher.
Schumacher. You gotta
Schumacher.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Schumacher.
that's yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So they don't even pronounce the extra letters you got in there. You could have just, like,
Like
scribbled it, right?
most common is Schumacher. Schumacher is how the most English
Schumacher.
speaking
At
Schumacher.
least I got the Jens part. I think I was
It's pretty
struggling with
good.
the J. The J just wanted to come out every single time.
So an easy way to remember this is like the Japanese yen, but like multiple of it. Yens.
And what do you got for the Schumacher side?
I got nothing. Got
You got
nothing.
nothing. Let's just be, I guess I should be grateful your company is not called Schumacher SO. Otherwise, I'd be probably very screwed trying to pronounce it every time. Well, Jens, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and being a good sport as we very immaturely pick on your name. So thank you.
That's okay. Oh, always
It,
a pleasure.
you can return the favor anytime you want to pick on an Ortiz.
It's too easy.
It's too easy, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's new with you? Like I said, this is the third time. I feel like our relationship just keeps getting better and better every time that passes. So um, this year, Team 24, it was a whole new Jens.
There was a whole new Jens. You think so?
Yeah, because I remember Team 23, you got this like kid with the backpack walking around with his laptop doing a demo of like, look guys, look at this cool thing I'm building. And this time's like he pulls out the brand and the logo. Did you have a booth? You had a booth, right?
We did have
So
Atlassian Ventures booth and then a pop-up
there
booth
you
for
go.
a little bit.
Yeah, you had some presence, right? So you had some expo hall presence, and so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
We don't have a big booth money yet. It's like
I think even the people that had the big booths don't have big booths money, but they somehow have the big booths for whatever reason. I don't know how they justify
yeah.
the price of the big booth money. I've heard of the numbers for big booths, and I'm like, how does it even make sense? Like,
Yeah, they got expensive. They got expensive. I think like last year was still like relatively affordable because it was COVID and then like getting people back in. But this year and it's like obviously they have Atlassians to pay for the venue and there's a lot involved. So they have to cover that. But yeah, definitely for small vendors, it's gotten more expensive. But this is why Atlassian started doing these pop-up booths. Not sure if you came by in that area. So it's
mhm.
just a bunch of small booths that you can get for a day. So for the just up and coming vendors, that's like 3K or something. It's a bit more affordable.
Yeah,
It gives them a chance to get some exposure. Obviously, you don't get the same level of traffic that you would get at a big booth. That's the drawback. I wonder if they can do anything to make that a bit more appealing to people. But
it's. I've been talking to a couple of vendors through this summer series. Right at this point, end of June, I've probably been through, I don't know, 70% of my list,
mm,
and we've talked. I've tried to get the strategy right because I feel from a vendor perspective, there's got to be a strategy to how to do teams. From a attendee, there's got to be a strategy because I don't know about you, but this year's team was so overwhelming for me. Like
mm,
just so overwhelming. I had I had items on my itinerary from 7 a.m. until midnight, like for 4 straight days.
Yeah. Yeah, but you
Where-
did that to yourself as well.
yeah, but it's like when else is a collective group of 4,000 of your closest friends
Yeah,
going to come together? Like, when am I going to go to Australia to hang out with Jens? Right? Like,
that's right.
you got to
Well,
take advantage of the fact that you're there.
anytime. Anytime.
I,
Just
I would kill to be there right now because I hate the heat.
well,
And
you would hate it here because it's cold.
that's why I would love it, because I would rather be cold. And it always blows my mind that you guys are like the one people that like do Christmas in the summer, because
I
by the
know.
time I do Christmas, like you're like in shorts and t-shirts, and I'm in
Yeah.
sweaters. And,
So there's people here who do Christmas in July because it's the winter here. But
right.
then I was like, what's the point? Like it's still 15 degrees outside, so it's still not snowing or something. It doesn't make a
Does it
difference.
snow in Australia at all?
There is down in the south, like towards like between Sydney and Melbourne, there's like a hill area, so you can actually go skiing there.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's not very good.
I'm probably, if I had a guess, I haven't tried it, although I finally have a car to try it, but I would guess that in 45 minutes I'd get to a good substantial amount of snow if I were to just
That is
drive
awesome.
straight. I just moved recently, so I don't live as close to the beach anymore. I'm a little bit more
Okay,
inland.
right.
Still good. I haven't touched snow in a while. It's been a while.
I love snow. I miss it. That's the one
Yeah,
thing I miss in Australia. Yeah,
I don't know.
seasons.
Seasons. Ah, Jens, I don't know, but yeah, no, team this year. I think again, action packed. I wish there's got to be a better strategy, like, because even from a vendor perspective, right? You guys, you're dealing with so much foot traffic. You're talking so much. You're in your face, so many people, and it's
Mm.
like, what? When do you go to the restroom? Like, when do you eat lunch? Like, it's just so much happening, and it's so much. Summarize it as chaos, a little bit.
Mm.
um that there's got to be a better method to like keep your sanity at a team conference.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure there's one strategy. I think it's like different for everyone. You got to figure out what's the key things that you want to get done. Like who are the main people who you want to meet. Just set some expectations and try to organize it beforehand as well. So don't know. I did this like interview with Martin Seibert, for example. Like he pinged me ahead of time, say, "Hey, can we do this interview?" I was like, "Sure." So
How
we
was
set up
that?
some time. It was
I
good.
saw I saw it recently. How was it? Like, what was the experience? Obviously, I know how the interview was, but how was the experience like working with
Yeah, I
Martin?
did a few interviews with him as well before, and it's always good. It's always good to chat to Martin, um, because they're in Germany, in Wiesbaden. In the past, I went to visit them at their office and spoke at a couple events there as well. They're always super welcoming, so that's always been a good
I
relationship.
bet you he could pronounce your last name correctly.
He did. He for sure did. Yeah, yeah. And Martin's just like a super nice guy, super fun. Um,
I had a little chat with him last Wednesday, and it was so interesting because I talk with a lot of people here through this platform, right? That we this brand that I've been building. And I don't know that I've ever talked to the CEO of a $100 million company, but Martin's on a different frequency as everybody else than anybody else.
mm,
Like you can tell, like it was the first conversation I've ever had in my entire life where I was like, I'm talking to a like this guy knows business. Like he knows how to
mm.
run a company. He knows a thing or two about a thing or two. It's very rare when to see that. So
He's done a good job growing that business. Or like obviously they've been in the ecosystem for a long time and started as a service company and then expanded into products and then kind of diversified with the model that they have now, that they incubate basically companies where the companies get some like resources, and
mhm.
I think the founders, they get, I think like 50% of companies, Summit Media gets the other 50% roughly, and but they get all the support from marketing and sales. But it's a great model because you sometimes have people who would go off and do their own company, but there's obviously risk involved. In particular, if you have family, then it's like hard to support this. So from their perspective, they get to do their own thing, be the CEO of their small company, get the support from the larger, like kind of somewhat parent company. But
And they
the
don't have
autonomy,
yeah, and they
yeah,
don't have to sell, right? They don't have to sell
exactly, yeah.
because yeah, we were talking about like, well, sometimes you hit like a glass ceiling, right? And you're kind of met with an ultimatum, and like sometimes you just don't know where to go up from wherever you plateau at.
Mm,
And from every friend that I've seen that has sold their companies, I think I haven't heard it, but I've definitely I kind of just from in the way they speak now, I feel regret, right? Like I feel like
mm,
they have regret from selling their business, as opposed to like, what would have happened had they something like Siebert, right, taken on a venture model like Siebert's, where you can still grow your company, just you have some help.
mm. Yeah.
Would it be a model that Release would be interested in the future, or you thinking of going all the
Uh,
way?
I think we talked in the beginning a bit as well, but like for us, it was like less interesting because basically the founders decided we want to do this on our own and like own the company 100%. So we took on some venture funding from Atlassian, and it was like partially strategic, partially to de-risk the first year a little bit in terms of like salary and hiring other people. But in generally we're trying to bootstrap the company because it just creates like a different dynamic and more pressure if you take on venture funding, and you don't have the freedom. You feel like you have to grow at all costs, like all the time, and hire, and it's basically turns into an outcome of like either goes well or it doesn't go well at all, and like you go under and you
Right.
have to answer to other people. So we didn't want that. We wanted to make sure that we can grow this company sustainably, um, and build good stuff. That's kind of what everybody's here for.
So here we are 1 year later, almost 1 year later, if not exactly 1 year, no? Somewhere around there?
Yeah, exactly 1 year, pretty much.
And,
Yep.
so what are some numbers looking like? Like, how many employees I'm assuming before it was just you and your co-founder? Maybe a couple
Yep.
devs. How many employees are you at right now?
Yeah. So back then I think we just brought in another developer. So there were like three of us. Was for the first half year was probably me and my co-founder, and then we brought in another guy, and now we have four people in total. So we brought
Okay, so
in
you
another
doubled?
developer.
You doubled
Yeah,
in a
we
year.
doubled, like 100% growth. Yeah, we
Okay,
got like
number's a number. Win the win.
almost like 400 installs on the marketplace, which is pretty good. That's
Yeah, that's a
like
respectable number. I know a lot of companies trying to, just in double digits, right? Like it's some even in single digits still.
yeah. It takes a while to get in, and we can talk more about the marketplace kind of dynamics. Like a few things have changed that were actually a disadvantage for us to grow.
Did they get rid of your category too?
So they for a while they had kind of the like rising stars, like
Mhm.
how they picked has changed. So I think the rising stars and like the staff picks was all like manually picked before. So you apply for it and then you get put it gets reviewed by someone. It's pretty opaque, and then you either get that badge or you don't. And it changed it. So we applied for 1 quarter. We didn't get it because we were too early, I guess, or didn't have enough growth at the time. And then they changed it for the second quarter, where we could have applied to the manual, to the like an automatic model, which basically looks as like the numbers, like who are the fastest growing in the last 6 months, like for the first 6 months of the plugin existence. And I think we just probably by a week dropped out of that kind of 6 months. So we didn't get the badge there either. So we never got like a rising star badge, which kind of
Mm.
puts you up on the homepage or in the marketplace. And that gives you a lot of traffic, I think. Um,
Or you go your route, just build a good app.
Yeah, I think the good app is one thing, but the other part is people have to find out about it, and that's actually much harder than you think now. Like in the marketplace, there's search as well that you can get discovered by, but in general, this is why so many people like they build a great app and nobody ever finds out about the great app, whether it's in
Yeah.
marketplace or externally. And
And you've done quite a few things, right? Because like obviously you promoted on my channel. I've done a couple of app reviews.
mm.
What else have you worked on to get to where you're at?
So we did run a few Google ads, and that like mixed results. It's really hard to attribute that, and the keywords that we can bid on is also fairly limited or too broad, like release notes. If you search for release notes, it's just like very broad and quite competitive in some regards as well. We did some LinkedIn advertising as well, but again, like we don't have the booth money, so we also don't have like the big marketing money
Marketing spend money.
either. Marketing money. Um, so it's mostly LinkedIn, really. Like LinkedIn is probably the biggest channel where I try to kind of grow the audience for the company brand, but also like my personal brand.
So what do
And
you guys think? Do you give out like maybe guides or tutorials, or what kind of content are you putting out on LinkedIn?
yeah, initially was this is what we're still figuring out as well. Initially was a lot about kind of starting a business in general, like product management advice, but there's a ton of people who do that. So I started narrowing it down a bit more towards the ecosystem for now, which is a little bit more unique. So kind of like advice on growing an app in the ecosystem, but also just general like product advice or like app, like showing apps. So for example, when we build like a delightful feature, or when I find a delightful feature as well, it's like, oh, look at this. This is like a really
Uh,
like in Google, they have this thing where you can indicate like whether you work from home or not. And previously it was hidden in the settings. And now they made it like super easy to set it on every day at the top. So it's kind of cool if you have like a hybrid environment. It's like, oh, you can let people easily know whether you're going to be at home or if you're going to be in the office, and that meeting will happen in person.
And so that's a
So
good
like
point.
small,
What I'm hearing though is
yeah,
like you don't necessarily have to put content or create content around your app, but rather just good content, right? Helpful
yeah,
content, and people will be
yeah. And
like,
I think it's
"Oh,
a mix.
yeah,
Yeah,
what does Jens do?"
yeah. I think it's like you kind of want to be helpful in other regards. Like otherwise, it's just about promoting your app, and that's not really good. But showing a bit about how you think about things behind the scenes, or just trying to be helpful to other people, and that I think that works probably best. So that's our main channel behind, like aside from the marketplace. And then like you have the like Atlassian forums as well, and that helps quite a bit as well. The community forum. If somebody has a problem there, responding to it, just being a bit more active, but also when then obviously somebody asks about release notes, and you can say, hey, like, have you tried this app?
Right? Do you partner with some of the solution partners as well?
We did, yeah. So at Team 24, we actually won the what is it? The Marketplace Partner of the Year. And it's called Marketplace Collaboration, and
Hmm.
it's basically like which partners collaborated the best. So that was actually with the App Anvil team from Cyber Media. That's why I know so much about them. So they took this model, and we started working with them like fairly early on. So it's when they adopted released to for their release notes and apps. So if you use like Mantra or um, Aura, like any of their apps, they communicate the release notes in product and Confluence now with the release pop-up, which is awesome.
Hmm.
But they also integrated it as a macro. So they have like a release macro where you can easily embed a changelog into your Confluence page
That
as
makes a
well.
lot of sense because like usually when you're thinking release notes, right? I think we go back to our very first conversation of like, I think the best release notes I've ever seen in my life is my Tesla's release notes, right? And
Yeah,
every time I look at them, I'm like, I always think of that conversation I've had with you. Like, these are beautiful release notes.
that's so good. That's so good.
And being able to put those into Confluence or somewhere where people are actually going to read them or do something valuable with them, just lowering that barrier to interact with your app, I think is super critical.
Yeah, you find them often hidden away in a community site or in the documentation. And I think for depends on who the release notes are targeted towards. So if they're written for admins, maybe the admin is motivated enough to find them or go out of their way to go and read them. But for most users, if you want to tell users what's new in the app and what they can do now, they're not going to find those release notes. They're not going to go actively looking for them. So you really want to bring that to them and show it in app. And there's different things. Like maybe you have once a month like something in the product, or if there's something worthwhile promoting, you can promote in a product, and otherwise you put it onto the website for the admins. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both approaches, but you certainly want to make sure that users also feel like there's new things coming, and they kind of find out about new features. I had a conversation with a product manager from Canva, and he said that sometimes they still get feature requests for features they shipped a year ago because users just don't find out about it,
They don't know.
especially if the product gets so complicated.
I think that's so true with everything, right? Like even with Jira, I'll find myself like, can Jira do this? And I'll go try it, and I'll go check through my emails, and I'm like, oh crap, I got an email from like January when they announced that it could do it. So yeah, it's just that there's just so much goodness always coming out of the apps, regardless of like who's making apps, right? Usually just people are churning out traffic or improvements that you kind of just forget. Apple, I think, is a great victim of this, right? Where you go to the iOS or like WWDC that they had a few weeks ago, and iOS 18, 50 new features. And when I get iOS 15 on my phone, I'm going to go, what are those 50 new features that I got to go try out? Because there were just too many. There's too many to remember.
Yeah, well, like it really depends. Like what I do, I usually when I get it, then I look up the blog posts with all the features and like try them out. So in one way, I think they're doing a good job because they make it very predictable when new features are coming out. People know where to look and they communicate them. And in particular, the biggest features, I think people just know about them and they find out about it. So from that regard, I'm not sure if like once a year new features is like the best way. I guess they have like bug fixes and small improvements along the way, but
what do you think is the role of social media on your releases though, or on your release notes?
Sorry, what's that?
The role of social media and influencers on your release notes. What do you think? Because I have an idea, or I have an opinion. I wanted to see what you think, and then I'll kind of tell you what I was thinking and see if it changes.
On our release notes.
No. Not on your not like on your app, right? But just the influence of a social media personality on a company, and they push a feature out, and then a social media like influencer or somebody of that nature goes, oh look, here's something cool you could do on Android or on iOS or on your Tesla, right? Like, what do you feel is like that role in today's society to help evangelize the features that you released?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously that's why they're called influencers, right? So they have some influence, and if their followers, it's big. And I think this is where it's important to actually communicate those features through various channels, because you want to give them an opportunity to find them and then talk about it. And whether that happens organically or whether they're paid for it, that's like a different thing. Like ideally,
I'll tell you a quick story. Like I was swiping through TikTok one day, and I see this guy has changed the lock sound on his Tesla, right? And I'm downstairs, the family's just around the house. I get up and I run to my garage, and the door slams shut. So my wife's like immediately, because I didn't have time to. I was so excited I didn't close the door gently. So my wife's like, "What the heck's going on?" So everybody's like rushing down to see why am I running to the garage? And they're in there, and I'm like, when they come into the garage, they can't see me because I have my glove box open in the Tesla, trying to find my USB to take it out. And by the time my wife sees me pop up with the USB, and she sees me like run right past her and the kids, and I'm running back to my office, she's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, I can make my Tesla make sounds because I just saw somebody on YouTube or on TikTok like do the new update, which I confirmed I have. So I'm like, I have to go try this new feature out. And so I'm like running around the house just trying to make my dumb Tesla make the Master Chief sound. but it's,
how was it?
It's great. It's phenomenal. I love it, and like it freaks everybody out every time where it's like finish it. Nice. But wrong video game. But there's a lot of I cycle through all my sounds. But the point I was trying to make though, right, is Tesla. There's a release notes, right, that are on the car. Cool. I usually ignore them. But when I watch a TikToker go, "Hey guys, Tesla just released the update last night. Here's some 5 can't miss features," or "Here's my favorite can't miss feature," I go immediately and like try it out. Like those are the videos I end up liking. And that's
Yeah.
usually now how I get my, oh, here's some new stuff that's released. Or even like same thing with like iOS or Android and stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah, I think in particular in iOS, like and Android, the updates for individual apps are a bit hidden, so you wouldn't go and find them. Like they update automatically. And this is why nobody invests any energy in writing those updates, because it's usually did some bug fixes, added some new stuff. Like every feature is the same there. So yeah, it's really about the channel where you find you capture the most people. And like
But,
for us, yeah, good.
no, I was gonna say, but what about then making the release notes more social media friendlier?
Hmm.
Right? Because like when you, since you have a platform to help package the release notes, is there a method or a tool or a technology or methodology that can say, hey folks, as you're releasing your shipments of features, you can record these like 30-second looms that are like optimized for social media, optimized for sharing, optimized for TikTok or in reels or something, so
Hmm.
that the world can share them. Because nobody's reading release notes from a mainstream perspective. Like my mom's not reading how to you know how to turn
Yeah,
on.
like I wanted to make my life easier, so that was like one of the features I really wanted to build mostly for myself. Uh, Probably more like less so the TikTok, but more sharing on Twitter, sharing to LinkedIn, and making that as a first step, even just a text and maybe some images. But we just haven't gotten around to it yet because not many people have asked for it. So it's not the most important thing for people. But I think it will, like once you have it, it will probably be used a little bit more, I think.
Yeah,
So we'll get around to it eventually.
that's always the weirdest thing. Like because as a business owner that you are, right, you have a lot of data that you have to kind of like balance out to say, where do we invest our calories? Where do we invest our limited finite resources? And what has a bigger bang for your buck? So with that said, then, and now that we're a year in, what does
Mhm.
year two look like for you then? Like, where are you investing? Like, where do you see your app going?
Yeah, so and this is where, yeah, it is an interesting question. So release notes was for us the first step. So, but the biggest problem that we want to solve is communication with customers and stakeholders.
I'm
I
telling you,
should say.
they're on TikTok.
Yeah. So and we will. So but release notes is like one part of it. The other part is also how do you engage with people? How do you first of all, like how do you communicate not only what you've done but also what you're going to do? And the internal customer part actually plays a big role here as well. The internal stakeholders. Think about your sales team and think about your marketing teams. What I've found at Atlassian as we grew as a company, and the sales and marketing team was in the US, and most of the development team that I worked with was was in Australia. It became just really hard to keep everyone up to date of what features are planned, what features are going out, and in particular, like field
What
marketing,
features got killed?
what features are killed. Yeah, and we just basically had to have a meeting like every couple of months or so, like every month, to get everyone up to date. And it wasn't like that was like usually a roadmap meeting, and that's what people do. It's like, oh, we have a quarterly roadmap review. Let's see what we're going to work on. And then as soon as you leave that review meeting, because that roadmap was done in PowerPoint or somewhere else,
Obviously,
like a
yeah.
week later, it's obsolete. And it's just not a great way. And it's not a good way for people to give feedback along the way as well. So that's the next thing that we decided to solve. And that's what we talked about at Team 24. Like, how do we share those plans and roadmaps and make it really easy to do that from Jira? And it's in beta since for like 6 weeks now, private beta, and we're gonna finish a couple more features to allow people to create certain, like, display what fields they actually want to show on the public roadmap as well. Maybe you don't want to kind of show, I don't know, what's like some internal fields. Like one problem with showing stakeholders a Jira roadmap is that it's too complicated. There's too much information, there's story points, whatever, like all that stuff is too much for them, and then the language that's used is not tailored to that audience as well. So this is why nobody shows, like, here, points to the roadmap in Jira and say, look, this is what we're working on.
And even Jira is such a it has the advanced roadmaps, right? And then there's the basic roadmap. Well, really now timelines. But Jira, I feel it's hard to roadmap in Jira,
Yeah.
right? You can't put milestones. A lot of people love milestones, right? You can kind of fudge it around with like fixed versions and stuff, but it doesn't feel natural. I think Atlassian tries to make it easy with that advanced roadmaps, but it's paywall behind that premium feature as well, right? But the
And
bigger
again, the advanced roadmaps are also more around like this. This is what I found, because I was like, oh, we can build this, like one feature, one capability that we have as part of this roadmap is cross project roadmaps, which is actually for timelines is not available for team managed projects. I was like, oh, maybe we just solve that problem as well. We have like cross project team managed projects now for roadmaps for people, and we can market it as that feature as well. But the expectation that people have from their roadmap is quite different to what we are offering. So for example, one thing that we do by default is we allow you to create a different description that is not the standard description, because you want to tailor to a particular audience, right? Like the initial description might be more technical. And there's a lot of the advanced roadmaps are really built around kind of capacity planning, team planning, when is it going to be done, and really to the detail, what tasks are involved. Where the roadmap that we are building is much more high level. We're saying, hey, these are the features that we want to ship by a certain time frame, or this is coming now, next, later. So it's really more about that communication part, and how do you structure a roadmap that is super simple for stakeholders to understand and keep track of.
that's like I said, a lot of improvements can definitely be done on the road mapping side, just on the road mapping narrative within the Atlassian tools, right? So applaud you for just jumping in there, because the other part that I was going to say is like road mapping, though, it's road mapping with the strategy, right? And trying to figure out the vision of what needs to be built is usually like a team of like product managers. But the executioners, the developers, those are usually not connected, right? Because they're over here reprioritizing, listening to new signals, new data points. That trickle into what makes it into Jira is usually very painful too, right? Like by the time a developer gets something, it's usually obsolete, or they're working on a sprint and like now a new emergency came up because something else needs to happen, and so it's pretty disruptive. And so I wonder if there's like what opportunities there are to also improve not just the road mapping to stakeholders, but then like managing the dependencies and the communication intra team for the team to go, hey, like your Jira sprint might be influenced by this roadmap over here.
Yeah, I think product discovery does a pretty good job. That's what we're using for it, where you have this more high level roadmap that gets planned and moves around probably a little bit more until you get to a point where you finalize and say, this is what we want to work on now, and then that gets into like the implementation.
But that's where Jira still falls flat, because the product discovery item, right, even though you have the roadmap there, isn't something you can see in the roadmap inside of Jira.
Yeah, but you basically, what you do is create the delivery ticket for it. So it's not the same.
But in product discovery, you can't see the whole. I mean, in product discovery, you can see the whole delivery ticket section, but you can't see it the same way you would inside of Jira's advanced roadmaps, where from the epic down, you have all the dates and the assignings in the field. But now the idea is missing. You can't pull the idea back from product discovery. And so right now, I'm coaching my teams to basically create an initiative on the Jira side that is the product discovery idea, and the date and all the data on the initiative, because that'll give you the full roadmap on the advanced roadmap.
Yeah, that's what we're basically doing. And I think in product discovery, you can, when you create an initiative, you can just include a product discovery ticket text in there, like it's like an embed, so you don't have to duplicate the data as well.
That might be an automation I might look into. Just auto create once your product discovery idea is ready, make it an initiative.
That's what we're doing. And then like when all the dependencies are kind of the delivery tickets have been completed, then we have an automation that moves the idea into a done state as well. So you don't forget to update that. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of like nice automation that you can set up to make that really nice.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I remember just working in big companies, right? Like the whole road mapping thing is just like something where there's so many moving parts in a business and priorities shift every single day. So it's very critical that you have something that's living to show
Mm.
you those moving parts. Because if you're depending, like you said earlier, right? If you're depending on a once a quarter meeting on a PowerPoint, then I think it's useless. Like you spend so much time creating the PowerPoint only to walk out of the meeting with the PowerPoint completely obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember the last like the startup that I worked on before released, we did a quarterly presentation to the board with the roadmap, and like basically every month I spent time like moving dates around. It's like, oh, this is not happening, this is going to be delayed. It was just like super painful to communicate at a high level. And if you have this more ongoing, and not necessarily, we don't do time frames at the moment anymore. Depends on if that's something that you need to do, but the way we communicate at a higher level is just the now, next, later. Like, what are the priorities? Because for
So
us, the time frames don't matter.
yeah, so you dropped the date. That's interesting because the question I was going to ask you is any plans to support like was or committed versus actual dates? Because that's one of the things that I often see with when we're planning our roadmaps is we have a wishful thinking of like, hey, we're going to finish this by
Mm.
July 4th. Well, the reality is we're not going to start it until July 1st. And
Yeah,
it's not going to end until like August 3rd. And
yeah.
so, but I want to know, I want to, like, me as a stakeholder, I want to know that we had signed up, we had an intention of doing July 4th. We had a delay and didn't ship until later. Because those are data sets or data points that I now want to take to figure out what happened. How did we
Mm.
miss it by a month? But we don't, there's no tool that I've seen so far that can kind of reliably show you those deltas of we had a plan went to crap.
I think the problem is that it's always the case that the plans went to crap. So do you need to, like, I think engineers, and they feel if you provide that capability, they feel like, oh, it's like, is it just going to be used against us?
So then doesn't
So
that make you beg the question, why have the roadmap to begin with? Or you do what you're saying, you just have a now, later, much later.
I, I think that's kind of like what depends on really. I think a roadmap with timelines makes sense if you have really specific delivery dates that you need to hit. Maybe if you're like in manufacturing, and there's like hard dependencies on your delivery, and if other people are dependent on it, and then you have to figure out how do you scope it that you can actually hit it. Maybe you say it's like, hey, we're gonna release this feature. We If we don't make it in time, we can descope it by that, and we're pretty sure we can deliver this bare minimum by that time. So that's kind of how you have to think about it. But from a priority perspective, if you want to communicate priorities to stakeholders, the timeframes are not as useful. It's much better to just say, like, what are we working on now? Like, this is the things that are coming up. Maybe you can give rough timeframes. Then the things that are coming next, it's like much harder to give timeframes for those because you don't even know when the thing's finishing that you're currently working on.
Right.
And
You just
yeah,
want to
and
tease a little bit.
it's whole like estimation. There's like, yeah, there's a whole like conversation in the development world, or like the use of estimation meetings, because like ultimately they're always like wild guesses and you don't know what's going on. So for example, we had this bug recently where we use this component from like Atlas Kit, and we've been having some troubles with it, and it's partially the way we use it, and partially like
The way
there's some
Atlassian
things
ships
to
it.
be improved. Exactly, yeah. But essentially, we had like a version bug where the version search didn't work for some reason. So it's like, okay, maybe now it's time to replace this component with something else, and it should be quick. So we did it like in a week, and that was fine to solve that version bug, and we got that out. And it's like, oh, but we don't want to have this. We should replace all our select components with this new component because we want the interface to be holistic and nice. And then the replacing of all the other ones took another 2 weeks, which we totally did not estimate, just because there's like so many small things popping up, and this other field has like a slightly different requirement, and we have to cater for that in the new component. So it's just, I would have expected this whole thing to work a week. If I knew that would take 3 weeks, I probably would have deprioritized or like prioritized it differently. But those are things that are just like super hard to estimate up front.
And what do you do when you're too far into it and you're like, oh man, we got to pivot? Like, do you drop it? Do you do an opportunity cost? Like, or do you like, no, we committed to it, we're doing this?
Yeah, it really like at that stage, like when we knew 2 weeks, like we knew that there was like another week left, roughly. So we had a fairly good idea by that time, like what was left. But yeah, like if you don't know, if it's still unknown, it's like, I don't know, maybe you do an opportunity cost and say, hey, like maybe we should do this later because other things are more important right now. But at the same time, sometimes you have like a hard project, and I see teams, and we did that at Atlassian, unfortunately, sometimes pivot away from that hard problem and say, okay, we're not going to solve this right now. Like, this is taking too long. This other priority is more important. Where really what you should do is, okay, like, can we deliver this? Let's look at this problem differently. Can we deliver it in a different way? Can we descope it but still deliver most of the value there instead of letting it go? Because the problem is, when you let it go, not only does the problem not get solved, but also the team that has worked on that problem, when you come back to it, it's probably gone, or is working different areas, maybe left the company. So you lose a lot of the context and the knowledge there as well. And picking that up again, like, basically means you have to do it all over again. Yeah.
So I did want to ask now, as we're entering the second half here and down to the last quarter here. I gotta get this number straight, man, because I got 10 fingers. You got another 10. We gotta figure out, is it 12 or is it 13?
That's
first two, Mike and Scott are easy. There's employee 1, employee 2.
Yeah.
So somewhere there's
So I was.
Who do you remember?
There were 12 people when I left, when I joined. So I joined as employee number 13, but the 12th person left a couple of months after, and I was 12. So it's a tricky one.
I see. So it could be seen, depending on the time of day, it could be either or.
That's right.
So wait, or
I just like 13 is just not a very lucky number, so I just mentioned 12.
But you could say you're employee number 13, but you're the 12th employee.
That's right. And I think there was even people who started before and left before me as well. Yeah. But even more important, let's talk about Rovo. What do you think about Rovo?
I was initially very not optimistic about Rovo.
Oh, interesting.
Mainly because I haven't bought into the whole AI trend yet. Right? But I met with Jensen. I don't know if you've met her, seen her. She's one of the product managers on Rovo.
Okay.
From Atlassian. And we interviewed her on the Jira Life. Maybe, I had to be like right after Teams, right? And she convinced me that Rovo is the future.
Oh, good.
So
what are the main features what's the main thing that convinced you there?
Well, I'm not convinced yet, but what I told her, what I would be convinced to Rovo be the future, right? If Rovo can be easy to use, because the idea is that it's going to be like a cookbook almost, right? Like, you'll have recipes, and you have to pick the recipe for the thing that you're trying to do, and it's just going to be a multitude of recipes, right? Millions or thousands and thousands of recipes, which is very similar to like automation rules, except automation rules, you got to kind of think about it for a little bit, right? So I told her, like, the only way that this is really going to pick up, right, is because that recipe needs to be like spoon-fed type of recipe, like to the T, like very helpful, very easy to use, very easy to create. Because if you got to think about it too hard, it'll be, I feel like Rovo has the potential to be what data analytics is, where you need
Mm.
50 PhDs and nobody knows how to use them because only the people that created the cookbook and only the people that created the features at Atlassian know how to use it.
Mm.
So it's got to be super simple that like my wife or my kid. By the way, your 2 cents. We're starting something called Jura Junior,
Oh yeah.
where it's like Jura for kids by kids, right? But anyways, different topic for
Yeah.
another day. But
Right.
but yeah, my Jura juniors, they need to be able to use Rovo effectively.
Yeah. Right.
Like that would be my requirement where I have like a group of 16, 17, maybe high school kids that are aspiring to be computer science majors. Like they should be able to know how to use Rovo. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
that complicated.
So we spent like a couple of weeks to work on like a beta for Team 24. Like there wasn't much talk about the. I think a whole bunch of ecosystem partners built small integrations and agents. I think I'm not sure if they still call them agents.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was good. Like first of all, to give feedback to the team, and it's like, oh, this is not working so well, but also to see what the potential is. And I think the potential is pretty high, in particular for the chat thing. So we built this. If you want, I can show you. Actually, I still have this up.
Good.
Let's say you want to find out what's new across the board in your company in terms of releases and what has been shipped. What you can do with chat here is to simply ask a question. What has been released? And Rovo will go and find the answer. It's gonna invoke a couple skills, the changelog lookup, and then we'll find those answers, give you links to the tickets that are related to those features that have been released, and it can give you links to the release notes as well if we ask for it. All right, so here we have the different programs, teams, and then we can just click on the release notes to get more insights here. So this will take us straight to the release notes powered by Released, and here you can just scroll down and see what the team has been delivering. Now, if you want a summary, for example, say what security features have been shipped by the mobile team. So you can get really specific about what questions to ask and what get specific about the features, about the area. So if you have a customer or a stakeholder that is really interested in security, you need to answer those questions. What has been done in that area, you can simply answer that with Rovo as well. It will go through the release notes and find out exactly what has been released for security. Now, of course, you can like summarize it. Give me a summary in a couple sentences. I will do that as well. So yeah, pretty much like all the here you get a summary. Then again with the sources cited, linking you to, in this case, to a couple of the Confluence pages that have more detail about the 2FA and the authentication that has been added. So that's a quick demo of Rovo and the integration with Released, where a released skill can actually dig into the release notes to give you more insight about what's been going on in the organization.
Well, I know we're running out of time, so I didn't want to talk about Sharif a little bit because obviously
I can go over a bit if you want. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
I can go over
a few minutes. Yeah, because I'm curious about this relationship with Sharif because I got to meet him. I got to spend a couple of hours with him.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I'm an award winner now. I don't know if you saw. I got an award and probably one of the best nights of my life outside of the birth of my 2 kids and my marriage. But right there,
meeting Sharif or the award?
I think the whole night, right? Like the whole night was this memorable night, and it's one that I never thought I would have had the like the pleasure of living through. But
Yeah,
yeah, I got to sit
awesome.
next to Sharif, and it was so funny because I did not recognize Sharif. Like I had my dumb butt. I saw Sharif Monday.
Mm.
He was at the Steeper info session
Yeah.
on stage. I'm right in front of the stage, and no idea, right? And he here comes Sharif to the table, and he's like, "Hey, mate, can I sit here?" And I'm like, I don't know because they're very picky. They're very selective here. They were kicking
Mm.
everybody out. I was so scared. Like I was like, man, someone's gonna come kick me out of this table. There was like a special dinner we had,
Right.
and so he starts asking around, and he's like, they said I could sit here. I was like, awesome. And so he sits next to me, and I have no idea who he is. Like I have no idea who Sharif is. And so we get chatting, and like we're talking, and I'm telling him what I do on YouTube, and the whole journey of my life and what's going on. And at the end of the night, I felt like Sharif, like I had a fan for life. Like his
Mm.
energy, like the way he like projects his energy was just like so mesmerizing. So what are your like favorite memories of Sharif?
I wonder if I have a
Well,
favorite memory of
well, does it start? Would you guys pulling my leg, or did you like actually hire him?
I did hire him, yeah. Well, I was part of the interview process. Yeah, yeah.
So that must
Yeah,
be
and
memory number
back
one.
then and back then he came from a telecommunication company in Australia where he worked, and I think he worked as a product manager already. So like, and that was like a long time ago. So pretty young. And I keep making fun of him because his application had some spelling issues. There was no Grammarly back then, and that was like
I was
the
gonna
thing
say
that he
engineers gonna be engineers, man. We don't spell very well.
gets to hear until today. But he always had like a great like intuition for product, and um, I think like a right balance of being opinionated about things and then like letting it go or getting feedback in. So that's been good. So he worked on like a bunch of interesting products. He worked on Confluence for a long time, and then he worked on like Atlas recently, and now it's like all over the AI piece, as he probably told you.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it was
he's
just like a lot of great. So in Barcelona, Atlas camp. Like I remember we practiced. I have like a couple of photos. I can share them. You can blend them in if you want. Practicing our talk for Atlas camp in this like super nice W hotel at the beach. So that's probably one of the memories that I have as well. Yeah,
about
just
him.
like a lot of good memories. We spent a lot of time together at Atlassian. So
That's really cool. Yeah, like it's very rare like to see cool people. Like I just like the way Sharif is so vested, right? Like I've never really seen that, especially from like people that are pretty high up in the company, right? Like it's just like it's interesting to see people like take an interest of like what do you do and like actually
mm,
remember, right? Like because if you recall when I ran into you and him, it was the next day.
mm.
And so for him to like still even remember any of that stuff, I'm like, it might not seem like a big deal, right? But like to someone
Yeah.
like tiny like me, like it's a pretty big deal. Where like Sharif remembers. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
but I think like ultimately, and I think this is the perspective there. Like ultimately, they're all people, all humans, and even though they work in like company, it's
I don't.
yeah,
I don't
they're all the
think so.
same.
I don't think so. I'll tell you this. I worked in huge companies my whole life, right? My whole life, and I worked at the Boeing company, Northrop Grumman, um, and these are huge, huge, huge companies. And the CEOs and these executives and like the people that run the ship, I've always seen them in this like just this such high pedestal that is so far away from the individual contributor.
Mm,
Like almost like the president of the United States type of prestigeness, right? I found the most hypocritical thing that a director or a VP has ever told me is like my door's always open. Come talk to me whenever you want, except
mm.
that you're always on the phone and your door's always closed.
Right.
And when it
Right.
and when it is open, it's not an inviting environment to go talk to, right? So to
Right.
genuinely see someone like Sharif and even the rest of the Atlassian team, right? Like I completely fell in love with Mike. Like Mike was I had a couple of conversations with him at team as well. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but I got my whole collection now of everybody.
The photos, yes.
Yeah, I was trying
I
to
saw
get
that.
photos of
Yeah.
all the executives, and I finally got them all. But it was like it was just so heartwarming to see, like again, Mike running the like being such an approachable person, right? Being able to talk to him. Sharif had me record a loom. Well, Sharif recorded a loom of me explaining to Mike the 24-hour live stream.
Right.
And so that was like such a cool moment that I got to tell the CEO of a company, like, for the death of your biggest product, we live streamed it for 24 straight hours, not slept for 24 hours, just to kind of celebrate that. So that was kind of cool. Like it was so it reminds you that they're, like you said, right, regular humans, but at the same time, it's reassuring to see that there's at least one company out there. Because like the
Yeah.
ones I've been in,
I think a lot of people at Atlassian are pretty down to earth, and like you probably see that as you mentioned, like in other companies, like sometimes people the position or the role they have gets a little bit into their head, and they feel like, oh, like we are like super special. I found that Atlassian the same starts to happen if you have like even some of the new starters or the kind of employees, like the developers, they kind of like Mike and Scott, and they get like super excited when they see them in the elevator or something like that. But from a leader's perspective, you don't. Most people, like, I never like thought about it that way. I was like, okay, well, it's like just like another team member. And you might not be as approachable because you have a busy schedule, you have meetings all the
right?
time, and but you do want to have that connection with like everybody in the company and be in tune with different levels of the company. So something that I used to do on Jira Service Desk, because people kind of felt the same way. It's like, oh, we don't get time to talk to each other. So I organized this what I call like a coffee and kuchen, like a coffee and cake Wednesday afternoon. People can sign up, and I'll like 3 people, and we just go and have a coffee outside and have a chat with people. So whatever they want to talk about. So and that was a relatively small team, like 60, 70 people back then. But I think that was people really enjoyed that. Just like having a chat about like what they're thinking, what their concerns are, like what just
And that's just so
make it a bit more
important though,
approachable, right?
because like I said, it helps with the camaraderie of the product that I'm helping build, right? Because especially like when you look at Mike and Scott, right? They're Atlassian was their vision. And like
Hmm.
this is their baby, and like everybody, even you who contributed and everybody who contributes today, like we all help push the needle forward. Like even me, like as a non-Atlassian employee, right? Like all these videos and tutorials and courses and all that stuff that I do, right? Like it only benefits the Atlassian ecosystem. It only benefits Mike and Scott's vision, whatever that is, of
Hmm.
their taking their company forward, right? But I just thought it was kind of cool to spend a few minutes with them. I do wish, but maybe wishful thinking would be like there should be more meet and greet opportunities.
Yeah, I think the hard part is, as you mentioned, like Team 24 is like so crazy, and with like Sharif and kind of people at that level, they have a pretty full schedule with press as well. So you have like a ton of press meetings, analyst meetings. So it just makes it really hard, and you have to prepare for the presentation, which is super stressful. There's like a
All
lot of
right, yeah.
beforehand. Um, yeah, that I think that's the hardest part. You have to go to dinners, and then afterwards you spend until like 1 o'clock at night working on your presentation for the next day or something like this.
Oh
It's
no, I
just
believe it, man. I believe it because I
yeah,
saw
I've
the same thing.
going as like an attendee in like 2023 for the first time, with not even having a booth. Like that was super fun for me because I didn't have any of the pressure of the presentations and anything else, and just seeing it from that different perspective was really fun. And even with the booth last like this year wasn't too bad. There was not too much to prepare.
So for 25, for Team 25, and we already got your vision on where you guys are going, but you coming, I'm assuming, back.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll see. Maybe we'll have a like a real booth this time. We'll see how we go.
booth. I want to be a real boy.
A real booth.
Well, Jens, I'm gonna mess this whole thing up.
Yeah,
Jens, I pronounce it Schu, right?
Schumacher.
Jens Schumacher. Thank you so much
Alex.
for being here.